Good evening, everybody. I'd like to declare this public meeting for the town of Petawawa, our 2025 budget public meeting, open. It's great to see everybody out here braving the snow and perhaps freezing rain. It's important that we open this up to the public for transparency reasons and to hear your feedback, your concerns, your input. So it's important that you're here because this is your budget. And based on your input, concerns, and feedback, we will make decisions that reflect our shared vision for the future of the town of Petawawa. Now, normally, if you know me, I just kind of speak off the cuff, but because it's an important meeting and it has to do with our budget and there's so many members of the community here, I have a little preamble and I'm going to read it because I want to make sure that I get this right. Sometimes when I make things up, it goes sideways on me. A budget is more than just numbers and percentages. It is a commitment from staff and council that we will make every budgetary decision with the goal of meeting financial targets while focusing on our strategic plan and responding to the increasing needs of our growing community. We strive to act responsibly and with integrity to ensure Petawawa, now and far into the future, is capable of meeting the challenges of our ever-changing society. Like every municipality, we are facing rising costs, economic uncertainty, increased demand for services, and growing infrastructure needs. We must not allow these pressures to force us, though, to compromise our mission of providing a high level of services, enhancing our residents' quality of life, and preparing our community for future stability and success. Thank you to Christine, our Director of Finance, and her Finance Department for all of their efforts in bringing forth this budget. We did begin this process substantially over budget, but we were able to prioritize, innovate, and adapt to bring the budget to its present form. An increase in taxes is never an intended outcome, and it's not a decision we take lightly. But I encourage everyone to not focus on just the percentages and the numbers, but on the reasons why we're here, which is to lead responsibly and make decisions that will support a thriving community far into the future. I'd like to thank our present council and past councils for all of their past efforts. You have placed Petawawa in an enviable position of having one of the lowest tax rates in all of Renfrew County, and yet we are still arguably the best place to live in Renfrew County. However, as we grow and expand, we must assume responsibility for more roads, more sidewalks, more parks, and other infrastructure. We are also required to complement our staff to meet increased workloads and demands for services. We also must plan for future expansion of infrastructure and services with our shared vision guiding us. Thank you for your trust. We are looking forward to facing these challenges and together finding solutions and efficiencies in order to continue delivering high-quality services in a cost-effective manner and building a vibrant and sustainable Petawawa. So thanks again, everybody, for coming. Our Director of Finance will now go through all the different levels of the budget. Once she's finished, we'll give a chance and an opportunity for anybody here in the audience that wishes to ask questions or make comments to come forward to the microphone. So with that, I'll turn it over to Christine.
Thank you. So the order of operations will start off with the town budget. So we will go over the tax revenue update and proposed tax rate increase, followed by operating, capital, and a reserve update. We also have a separate presentation for water and sewer, as those are self-funded budgets. But we will be focusing primarily on the town budget first. So with that being said, setting the stage for the presentation is our tax base. So to give you some context in terms of how the town is actually growing, breaking it down into dollars and cents. The town from 2024 to 2025 did grow. You can see on the slide just over $16 million. I do want to point out that's with an actual decrease in the D&D valuation. They did demolish a building on base. So that decreases our 2025 property tax revenue by approximately $60,000 for the 2025 tax year. So with that being said, I do want to highlight in that red text a 1% tax rate increase will raise taxes by $126,463. That does assume that the county ratios will remain the same from 2024 to 2025. I did attend the county tax policy work group today, and that was verbally confirmed by the County of Renfrew director or treasurer that those ratios will stay in place for 2024. So I'm confident in the accuracy of that number presented before you. So with that being said, on the following slide, the proposed tax rate increase before you for the public is 7%. I do want to point out that they're included in the 2025 budget are transfers to reserves. You'll see in the following slides, especially in the capital budget, we'll be taking funds out of reserves, but it's also important to replenish reserves. So included in that budget, or the proposed budget, is over $600,000 transfers to reserves. However, the current tax base will only allow us to have about $327,000 left over to fund our proposed capital budget. So in order to make up that gap, the math works out to a 7% tax rate increase to fund both our operating and capital budget. I do want to point out that just as a sample for, or context, excuse me, as to what a 7% tax rate increase equates to. So for the median household assessed value of $400,000, that 7% tax rate increase equates to $137. So moving into the operating budget, it is presented by department. So for council as well as the public, each department will have one slide having 2021 to 2024. I do want to highlight that the 2024 figures are year to date. They are not yet finalized. We are still in the final stages of our accruals, transfers, and as well as our audit. So those will be finalized over the next few weeks, hence why they say year to date and not actual. They have not yet been finalized. The second slide for each department is a forecast of 2025 to 2029. For the purposes of today's meeting and as well as for council's consideration, we are only requesting that obviously 2025 be approved. 26 to 2029 is just a forecasting exercise to kind of give a picture of the future. So I will focus my comments on 2025 for each department. I'm obviously happy to answer questions for those outer years, but I think 2025 is the priority for all of us. So on the following slide for 2025 administration budget, please, the increase year over year, or at least from 2024 to 2025. There are no new headcounts included in the 2025 administration budget. There are some other operating increases with respect to IT and investment in our infrastructure. So in terms of security and sustainability and business continuity, as well as from a health and safety perspective. So no significant changes. You will see an increase in the people costs, but that's because we have a full year's worth of salaries in 2025, whereas we had people start partially through the year in 2024. So again, I will be able to address comments. I do realize we have a full house here, so I will highlight the key items. So for moving into the building department, specifically for 2025, it is a fairly status quo budget. So no significant changes proposed within the building operating department there. Moving into the planning department, you'll note that in 2025, as well as in 2024, the people costs were significantly higher than in previous years. That's due to the fact that we have hired or have added staff count. And again, it's a full year's worth of 2025. So those headcount were added in 2024. So aside from those salary costs, no significant changes. There is, again, investment in technology with respect to online planning applications. So that is a plan that the planning department has to use cloud permit for 2025. Council, that's you guys. The major cost there are salaries, and then there was the addition of council communications. So that's something that's being, I believe it was discontinued for the past few years, but it was a practice in previous years. So that's being brought back into the budget there. With respect to economic development, the biggest driver there again is a full year's worth of staffing costs in 2025. So having hired or doubled from 1 to 2 people, the economic development department in 2024. We are continuing the $90,000 funding level of SIP grants. And then there's also growth in user fees. Christine Mitchell, not me, has seen great success with the container market, so there's increased revenues there. That's been incorporated into the budget. Moving into, excuse me, the environment. So that's a pleasant word for garbage and for the waste recovery costs. So we did get the costs or the confirmed costs for CPI for the waste management contract, as well as the Ottawa Valley waste recovery costs associated with our share of ownership. The budget does propose increasing the garbage rates from $225 to $235, so that's a $10 increase. Again, we do need to fund our portion of the retirement obligations with respect to the dump. So as those costs continue to build, we need to fund those costs, and that is through user fees specifically tied to what's driving that liability. Excuse me. For the fire department, there are kind of some housekeeping items, at least from a CEMC, so the emergency management in previous years was under the planning department. It has now been moved into the fire department. We are proposing that we add one staff member part-time effective July 1st. That is part of a recommendation that was presented to council in February as part of the fire master plan. Part of that fire master plan recommendation was also to increase the complement of volunteer firefighters. So for this year, there is a proposed addition of 2 volunteer firefighters for 2025. The fire master plan recommended adding 8. So in discussions with the fire chief, we are proposing that we add 2 every year. So rather than going from adding 8 all at once, to kind of ease into that growth. Just again, from a budget perspective and from a realistic perspective in terms of training and development for the entire department. There is also a significant transfer to reserve of $250,000. So we know in the next year or 2, we will need a new aerial pumper or a new vehicle, as also recommended through the fire master plan. So in previous years, we've continued to save for it, and this continues that practice. Within the library department, there was, or the library board did request an increase in funding of over $100,000. That is to help fund their staffing needs that they had previously funded through reserves. So that's continued and has been proposed and integrated into this budget. For the protection operating budget, that includes animal control, police, bylaw enforcement, as well as the related user fees associated with those operations. The biggest increase or the driving cost is the OPP contract. So I believe the first as it was in the news, the first kick at the can that the OPP, or the first invoice, I should say, the OPP gave us for 2025 was over 20%. They have now revised it down to a 3.5% increase for our budget, but who knows what those increases could look like next year and in the future years. There's also increased costs related to the Police Services Board. There was legislative changes that required the board to carry its own insurance, so that's a separate cost that's been incorporated into the budget too as well. Next, we have Recreation, Culture, and Tourism. So both for this department and the Civic Properties Department, what was once called Community Services, we have split those out into two different departments, hence why there's no historicals. It's hard to separate those departments from a historical perspective. But going forward, we do have in the 2025 forecast, there is the addition of the municipal accommodation taxation, or taxes, excuse me. So council did approve a MAT bylaw in 2024, so that has been rolled out for 2025. So it's an estimate to help fund our tourism budget in 2025. There's a significant increase in grant funding too as well. The SALC grant, which the town has now taken over in about July of last year. So we have incorporated those grant revenues into the budget as well. Next, we do have Civic Properties. So like I said, it's a new department, or breakout from the Community Services Department. Sorry, with it as part of the Public Works Division, Civic Properties. Excuse me. So the largest driver of this is all of our facility operators that maintain and operate all of our parks, the Civic Center, arena, outdoor rinks, all of the great things that make Petawawa beautiful. So this is a significant department for the town. So there's no significant changes proposed for 2025. It's kind of a see how it goes with the new structure and then the new team as part of the organizational change. But you will see in the capital budget, there's a lot of priorities from an actual facility perspective. So operating, no changes proposed from a people perspective, but you'll see the required investments from an asset perspective, if you will. Excuse me. So as part of the Public Works Department, there's also transportation. So our roads, snow plowing, as well as sidewalks. Excuse me. So the largest driver, or the biggest change for 2025 is the assumption of debt costs. So in 2024, council did approve 2 capital projects to be funded from borrowing. And at last week's meeting, council gave staff direction to evaluate 5 years for the Wolf Avenue reconstruction project, as well as 15 years for the Public Works yard expansion. So you'll see on the slide in bold, I have the assumptions there before you in terms of the amount and the assumed interest rates. I do want to stress that those interest rates have been very conservative in terms of what those the kind of today's rates are lower, but in terms of when we actually are able to kind of put pen to paper and sign the deal with the lending institution, the assumption, I hope, those interest rates will actually be lower than what's been included in the budget. But I do want to be conservative. And if they do end up being lower than whatever savings, so to speak, in terms of those debt payments, I would propose would be carried over into next year's budget to help reduce the tax burden for the full year's worth in 2026. Excuse me. So that is it for the operating budget. Moving into the capital. So rather than it being focused kind of more so on from a departmental perspective, it is more aligned from an asset management perspective. So with respect to fleet for example, fleet encompassing all of the town's vehicles, and then civic properties encompassing all of the town's properties. But starting off with administration, a lot of the projects here are carryover. So for example, the garbage contract and the website, those were things that we had in 2024 that are carrying over into 25. Records management system and design, really focusing on modernizing our document retention, so moving away from paper and more into a digital environment and digital organization. In the interest of time, I do want to focus on the larger capital items. So with that being said, the biggest in terms of dollars, or one of the biggest, is civic properties. So again, I do want to draw attention to the town hall renovation. So that has been a carryover from a couple of years as we get design and drawings completed for the project. So there's no significant impact to taxation because we've already saved for those funds. The other smaller items that are included on the list, even though it's small in dollars, it's quite important, is the civic properties building assessment. So the town hasn't had a corporation-wide building assessment done in a number of years. So in terms of, just like we have a recreation master plan and we have a fire master plan, we should have a master plan for all of our facilities. So that's the investment there, and that's needed considering the age of all of our facilities. I do also want to point out that the track and the ball diamond cost, you can see in the grant column and the reserve column. So that is a 50-50% proposed dollar allocation, if you will, but those are tied to grants. And we do not yet know if those grants will be approved. So if they're not approved, they will not go forward. And if they are, they will go forward. So that we have yet to hear back on both of those grant applications. Excuse me.
Christine?
Yes.
I just want to add one thing, just for the folks who have joined us here this evening. Can you just go back one slide for a second, CAO? And I'll just use the one at the top. It says Town Hall Reno, and it says reserve 540,000. So this was something that was budgeted for a couple of years ago, didn't get spent. Budgeted for last year, didn't get spent. So when you see an amount like that over in the reserve column, it means it's not new taxation. It's something that was budgeted for, the money has been accumulated, and it's sitting in reserve waiting to be used. So I just don't want you to think that when you look at that column that this is all new taxation dollars. It's something that's already been collected, sitting in reserve, and just didn't happen the year that we thought it would.
Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. Just to elaborate that and help explain the other columns too. So DCs stands for development charges. Debt is self-explanatory. I do want to elaborate on the other column. So the other column, we do get provincial grant transfer payments from the province. So I will touch on what those funds are near the end. However, rather than have a column for every single grant, it's just lumped into other. So again, I will be focusing on just 2025. So from an economic development perspective, the BRNE and branding implementation will be funded out of reserve. The Petawawa letter signing project, so the development of expansion, I should say, of the comfort station and the Norman Street in and out, which you'll see in the transportation capital assets, is kind of an expansion or an investment in that area. Next, with fire, another fire master plan recommendation is the procurement of an exhaust extractor system to help with the air quality at the fire station. Fleet, so two items being proposed. So an electric half-ton to continue the electrification of the town's fleet, as well as the blower that will be replacing an over 20-year, it's over 20 years old piece of equipment. So it is quite due for replacement. In the planning department, there's always plans and studies that need to be done. The majority or we can actually fund from development charges. So again, we're proposing that development charges be used for half of eligible costs related to the zoning bylaw, as well as the commercial and industrial land strategy. Next, excuse me, is the recreation, culture, and tourism. Now, this is a very small list. It is obviously a work in progress, as I have referenced the recreation master plan. Once that has been brought forward and presented to council in its final evolution, it is expected that both the specific properties as well as the recreation capital budgets will become a lot longer. Excuse me. And then we have transportation. So I did mention with the Petawawa letter sign project, the Norman Street in and out. So we do have some funds set aside from reserves, and then the majority of the funds will actually be coming from our CCBF government transfer payments. The rest of the projects, the Portage and Murphy Road, those are projects from 2024. There's always carryover kind of into the spring for the spring cleanup and carryover to make sure that it weathered the weather throughout winter. And then the remainder of the projects, I do want to point out that the Black Bay Road does say shoulders. That is a joint project between the town and BEI. So it will be partially funded by the town, with BEI helping to invest in Black Bay Road itself. And then there's also investment in community safety with 2 pedestrian crossings. We did 2 in 2024, so continuing 2 in 2025. So I'm trying to hit the large dollar items there. So the 2025 capital budget summary slide. So you can see it summarizes how we would be funding the total 2025 capital budget. So you can see that 28% is going to be, or proposed, I should say, to be funded from reserves, and that 1.2 is about 14% of the capital budget. So the next part of our the presentation does focus on reserves. So it really ties into that 28%. So how much are we taking out and how much are we putting into each of our reserves? So the working funds reserve, that's kind of a contingency, so nothing's being proposed for 2025. In the admin and elections reserve, you can see in the 2025 transfers in and out, the biggest, as Gary pointed out, is that town hall renovation. So we're taking out of our savings, essentially, what we have been saving for. So that's the largest ticket item there. The special projects reserve, so this was established in 2023 by council and was primarily earmarked for the Murphy Road project. And then the other larger purchase was a vehicle purchase for the public works fleet. So there are some funds left over, and they are being proposed. So there's a land purchase for the future development of a new fire hall, as recommended by the fire master plan. So there's 150,000 being proposed to be taken out of the special projects reserve there. Quenville and Severance, these are kind of just ones where we've set it aside, especially the Quenville, that's for drains, so we can't really touch these unless we absolutely need to. The library reserve fund, this has been set aside for capital investment into the library, so nothing being proposed for 2025. In the environment reserve, again, is focusing on the Ottawa Valley Waste Recovery Center or related projects, continued contributions to that reserve for the future liability of retiring the dump. For the fire reserve fund, we're continuing to grow that balance. As I mentioned, we're working towards saving for an aerial pumper for 2025. So kind of you'll see that balance grow every year, or it has been growing every year, excuse me, too, as well. The Public Works Reserve Fund, you'll see that there's some carryover from 2024. So the 10-year infrastructure study, so that kind of plans what the next 10 years will look like for our linear assets, so road, water, sewer, that has carried over into 2025. And we do also have a proposed transfer to reserve of just over $200,000. If you'll note, or I'll get into it in the last part, where we have a significant amount of capital projects proposed for 2026. So this will help us fund, I believe it's over $3.6 million in road projects proposed for 2026. In the industrial or / economic development reserve fund, again, that's we primarily have used that for our SIP grants, as well as transferring funds in when we do sale of land from the industrial park. So we're continuing to put money aside there for that future development of the industrial park, as well as for OP review and the planning and economic development. So kind of you'll see some ins and outs, but nothing significant in that reserve. The Civic Center Reserve Fund, this is kind of brother sister with the Parks Reserve Fund. So a lot of money moving out of the Civic Center Reserve Fund, but again, that is contingent on the ball diamond lighting grant that I referenced earlier being approved. And then if you also look at the Parks Reserve Fund, you'll see $425,000 being proposed to take out of this reserve in 2025. Again, that's if that track grant is approved. So the very last slide, I have alluded to it earlier, are the transfer payments that we receive. So there's CCBF, OSIF, and OMPF. I won't bore you all with what all of those acronyms stand for, but they are funds that the town receives on an annual basis to help invest in infrastructure. So you can see here before you that there's 1.76 million for 2025 in eligible funding. I do want to point out that we have carryover from 2024, and we are permitted to carry over funding up to 5 years for CCBF and OSIF funding. The reason for that carryover is the Portage project, the budgeted amount came under tender. So if it came under tender, we didn't need to spend all of our money, and we're able to carry that over into 2025. So that other column in the capital budget, we have the CCBF funding being allocated to Norman Street, that the in and out there, and OSIF being split between 2 projects, so the Civic Center parking lot, and as well as the Black Bay Road project. And we're using some of the OSIF funding from 2024 to focus on, we've got some carryover from Portage Road, excuse me. And OMPF will be allocated to Eichstätt Road. So all of these funds are meant to be invested in our infrastructure, and that's exactly what we're doing with it. We are proposing to keep $450,000 in reserve. As I mentioned, there's approximately $3.6 million in proposed road projects for 2026. The anticipated transfer payments that we get on an annual basis are expected to be $1.5 million in 2026. So if we add the 1.5 with this 450 plus the 200,000 that we are proposing to be transferred to reserve, to carry over into 26. That gets us up to $2.2 million. So we're still short. Obviously, things will need to be evaluated in terms of priorities, but we are trying to save now for next year so that we're not having to cancel or delay projects even further.
Can I just interject just to explain one thing? If we could go back to that slide, please. So if you look at the OMPF, that's the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund. It's a transfer payment from the provincial government to help municipalities with infrastructure projects. So you have to use it for that. In 2011, the OMPF payment to the town of Petawawa was 1.2 million. Here we are in 2025, and it's decreased on average by 15% each year to bring us to 2025. So whereas in 2011 we got 1.2 million, this year we're getting 176,000. Now that's supposed to be offset with other provincial government funding and grants, but it hasn't always come to fruition, let's say. So just an example of some of the pressures, not only us, but every municipality, most municipalities in Ontario are facing with reduced payments, but more costs to do what we need to do in terms of infrastructure.
So that is it for the town budget. I would like to kind of move. We don't have very much left in terms of moving into the water and wastewater. As you are well aware, for those who aren't, the town does undertake a utility rate study. So it does a 10-year forecast, both from capital investment as well as the rates required. So starting off with water, so the proposed 2025 increase in residential rates is 4.2% increase in water rates. And you can see off to the side, I have the forecasted rates. Excuse me. Similarly, on the sewer side, the proposed rate increase is slightly higher, and that is 4.5% of a rate increase for residential flat rates. I do want to point out that the town is undertaking a utility rate study this year. So while the 2025 rates won't change, I do anticipate that the 2026 and forward rates do change based on that utility rate study that we are undertaking with D&D. So just I did some quick math. It's not included in the presentation, but the 4.2% and the 4.5% increase in the flat rates. So from a residential ratepayer perspective, that would equate to a $40.36 increase for water and sewer rates on an annual basis. I'm trying to power through and make sure there's ample opportunity for comments and questions. I've got my binder, I'm ready. So I would like to, I guess, open it up to the floor.
Okay, thank you very much, Christine. I think you hit all the highlights, and if anybody is wondering about anything or has some questions, this is your chance. So if anybody wishes to come forward to the microphone, if you have questions for Christine on the budget or comments you'd like to make, now is your time. You just raise your hand, and when you come up to the mic, just give us your name, please, before you ask your question or make your comment. The floor is now open. Nobody ever wants to go first. Come on up.
Tina Noel. Just some clarification regarding the acronym for CCBF.
Canadian Communities Bill. It's what you commonly refer to as the fuel tax.
Oh.
We see percentages of fuel tax on the municipal level.
So that's a federal grant in as opposed to the provincial, if it's Canadian.
No, it's provincial.
Oh. I think it'd be Ontario. However, that's not what I'm questioning. The Norman in and out, could somebody explain that?
That would be the in and out So right now we have the comfort station that we built.
Correct?
So there's no access to that property other than from Norman Street and behind.
Yeah?
So to activate that site, what has been proposed is having an actual
Off the highway.
off the boulevard onto the property.
Okay, has that ever been a study done that, like the effect of that? Because the reason being that comfort station for an actual, if for on a snowmobile perspective, the parking lot is pretty limited. And if you're now putting a road in, you're gonna be able to park one trailer and one truck there if you have road access. So it's limiting the access of that. But anyway, but that's gonna cost quite a bit of money. And now the Black Bay,
Hang on, Tina.
oh, okay,
Well, our Director of Public Works is here.
okay.
He's going to give you some further info on the in and out.
Okay, so the in and out off the boulevard is intended to allow for better simplified access for people using the trailhead. The in and out doesn't cut into any of the current parking, and there are plans for extending, like adding more parking in subsequent phases. But the in and out design, as we have it designed right now, does not impede or impact any of the current parking at the trailhead. I think that was your first question.
So that what we consider as a parking lot is actually the road allowance. So it's just going to continue over the trail and onto the highway.
That's correct. The current, like where the cul-de-sac is now, will essentially be the road going out to the boulevard.
Gary took it off. The library, there was an increase in the library. Is it really being used a lot more to have that increase?
Want to comment on that? Councillor Carmody is the chair of the library board.
Okay, so James is going to give me the numbers.
I'll give you a reason for why we needed an increase in funding over the years through attrition and staff changes and that. We found ourselves in a situation where we had a library operating, I'm not sure how many hours a week, 70 hours a week, and we only had one manager. So we had a facility in business with nobody at the helm, so to speak, for 30 hours a week. And we kept running into situations where we needed somebody to make decisions, but we didn't have anybody in that role. And so we had to create a new position to accommodate for this situation. So it was a safety situation and just an issue of making a good environment for your staff.
So it's not a new position, it's just an expanded position, or?
Yes, we had a new position added.
Okay. But you couldn't diversify the things instead of a new hire? Like kind of making them sub-managers, but we can discuss later. And there was one other, Black Bay. What, the shoulders of Black Bay?
Okay.
Whereabouts on Black Bay?
I'll let our Director of Public Works handle this one. It's a complicated partnership with a business. I'll let Chris explain.
Why the business would be donating that, so now we're here.
Okay, so when the Milky Quarry was, I don't want to say open, but was expanded, there was an agreement made between the town and H&H Construction. H&H Construction was subsequently sold to BEI Construction, but that agreement had, on the condition of the quarry, it had certain elements of road rehabilitation involved with that. So there's a road project that we are working on for Black Bay Road from Highway 17 to the entrance of the Milky Quarry, which is around where the kennel is on Black Bay Road. The reason we have shoulders put in our budget is essentially what we're doing is turning that road into a proper truck route with paved shoulders for more safety for people who are walking on Black Bay Road. So essentially it'll look a lot like the segments of Black Bay Road that have been completed already from the boulevard to the highway. Okay.
If I could just add to that, it's part of our new philosophy here in the town of Petawawa. Any of our rural roads like Airport Road, Black Bay Road, Rance Road, Murphy, Dorn, we just feel that those are high traffic roads and we want to ensure the safety of our kids on bikes, people walking dogs. So we're adding a meter wide shoulder, paved shoulder, to allow pedestrians a safe access when they're close to traffic.
You might want to get all the snowmobile netting off the end of people's driveways on the same shoulders. Putting that out there.
Thanks, Tina. Any further questions or comments from members of the studio audience?
Hi, Jennifer Cluche. So I have a further question about the Norman Street in and out. You just said tonight that it was for the purpose of the comfort station. From what I've seen so far, the comfort station really has not been open since the day the building was completed. And from talking to town staff, the plan is only 4 months out of a year when there's a student to have that building open. So to spend the money we're looking at spending to put in and out seems a little bit futile.
Okay, so I'll take this one on. So it's part of a broader reimagination of that whole area, which has to go in phases because it's going to take some time and some funding should it all come to fruition. But there is a plan, and if you're interested, we can send you the concept drawings of what we hope one day to have there at the comfort station area. I'll deal with the 4 months a year. So once the snow melts, we're going to have a tourism ambassador there. So one of the recreation staff will make that their office. So the plan this year is to start with when it's not snowed in, let's say. But as we move forward in the future and that area becomes more developed and there's more parking, the plan is to increase the staffing so that, you know, maybe it'll be staffed all year long. Once that area is fully developed, should it happen with a container market and a new playground and other play areas and a youth center, then it will become sort of a hub of the town. And we felt it was important when it becomes that big and that busy that we should have greater ease of access to get to it. And maybe you haven't seen a concept drawing of the in and out.
Oh, I've seen it.
Okay, but it's only allowing traffic coming off the boulevard and traffic going on. You won't be able to cross and go different directions.
Am I on? Okay. So for the long-term plan for that area, even in moving the container market over to off Norman Street, we were told as residents that there would be a meeting with residents to discuss that before it happened. And that's not ever happened. And you guys are moving forward with changing the access into that area, which impacts our whole neighborhood. And we already know that the school, Herman Street, is a very big problem for our community. So now you're talking like we're adding $500,000 to do an in and out, and you haven't talked to residents to say, hey, do you want to change this whole park at the expense of $1.5 million? And the park is quite suitable. Like the kids love it. That ball diamond is used every single day all summer long. So to me, I think a conversation with the community to say, this is what we're looking at doing, and do you realize the impact to your taxes in doing this before we move forward in spending the money on an in and out?
Yeah, I appreciate your comments and concerns, and it's something we can consider doing before we get any farther down the road. Just in terms of the in and out and its effect it'll have on, let's say, Mary, John, Herman, our hope is that it will reduce traffic there, because right now anybody bringing a snow machine or an ATV to get to that parking lot has to go down Norman, Mary, John, Herman. That's the only way they can get there. So our feeling is allow them to come off the boulevard and they won't be going down Norman, John, Mary, Herman. Get those people out of that area where there's kids and schools and get them just coming off the boulevard. So that was our thinking, was to increase the safety and the traffic numbers within the neighborhoods there.
Okay. I think it'll bring more people in through the neighborhood, because if you're not going the right direction down the boulevard, you're now going down Dorn and then into Mary, John, all of those streets. So it may increase the congestion for us, To me, again, the money being spent, I'm not sure the value is there. That's it. Thanks.
Thanks. Yeah, come on ahead, Wayne.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. My name is Wayne Bando. I have a number, based on my experience with the municipal sector, I have a number of comments. The optics of this budget is very poor in that if you're either on a military pension or an owner's pension, you're getting a 2.61% increase. And the federal government just announced today that for federally regulated employers or employees, they'll get 2.4%, and you're asking for 7%. Based on the, as the previous person made the comments about the building that was the replica of the railway station, we spent probably about $1.2 million there, and it's very underutilized. So, you know, people are starting to question is what, you know, how does the town council come up with these ideas if, you know, they're not put to full use? Regarding the switching of the fleet to electric vehicles, very few of the public know the fact that the charging station that is put out there has cost about $24,000 to put a charging station in over and above the cost of the vehicle. I also concur with the comments of the previous individual that if you're doing a major project, that there should be a public information center ahead of time where there is some initial drawings available for the residents that are going to be affected by that project so that there can be the input put into it. That's a standard practice from municipalities where I've worked with for the last 20 years, that if we have a major project that's going to have an effect on the community, that you have a public information center that's advertised and give about at least 2 hours where the general public can come in and have a look at the initial drawings. The town seems to have gotten ahead in their staffing complements. We have to realize that with the town of Petawawa, the population should have an asterisk beside it. Of the total population of the town, approximately 8,000 people are located within the north and south town sites. This does affect the workload for certain departments, namely that you're not giving individual tax bills to those individuals, so that's a reduced workload for the finance department. And likewise, the town has virtually no planning authority over the D&D lands. There seems to be a big push on hiring people in the last 12 to 18 months, and this has certainly backed you into a corner, because now you're saying with your committed budget for your staffing complement, you don't have enough money left over to address your capital works program. Once again, that when you are analyzing what each department needs or doesn't need, you have to take into account, you know, what is the impact on the total needs of the organization. The other night you were debating the costs for the venturing Wolf Avenue and the Works Department office, and you were trying to get down to a 5-year to 15-year. Well, when you hire people in staffing up departments, you're into a much longer term commitment. So all I'm saying is that when you are doing midterm work and reviewing what the size of departments has to be, you have to realize that there's a long-term impact, and it may have a very negative impact on what you can or cannot spend on future capital works. Basically, I am against a 7% increase. It's not realistically, especially being today when, as of midnight, there's a potential of tariffs being introduced. And if they are, that's going to have a major impact on the economy. Part of this economy is based on the forestry industry. And if the tariffs go through, not necessarily at midnight, but U.S. is saying that it could be a month later, you won't be selling any white pine lumber to the U.S. for a while. So we're not really shielded away from impact of what new tariffs from the U.S. can be. And suddenly within 3 months, you have a lot of people no longer having a job. I mean, it's going to be pretty hard for people to keep paying their taxes. Thank you.
Thanks, Wayne. I'll try and deal with your questions and comments in order. So you began with the comfort station and you threw out a figure of 1.2 million. I'll just ask Chris what the actual cost of the comfort station was.
Okay, so there were two separate contracts. There was the original contract was for the foundation works and the servicing, and then there was the build construction. And I'm certain in saying that the total cost was 610,000, not 1.2 million.
And the charging station cost?
About $3,000. It is more expensive if you're putting in a public charging station, but if you're putting in a level 2 charger, the purpose is to charge a town vehicle, it's not 40,000. The charging station out here at Town Hall was less than 3,000 installed.
So in terms of the proposed electric pickup truck for the public works, when you put in a charging station for that, it'll be the same cost?
Yes, it's already installed, and it was less than 3,000.
Okay. Human resources and increased staffing in the town of Petawawa. So we will pass 20,000 people this year, and I know there are some people who live in south side and north side. It's actually 6,000, not 8. But they still use the town services. They use our rinks, they use our ball diamonds, they drive on our roads. These are residents of the town of Petawawa, even though they live in federal housing on the garrison. They are members of our community. So for many, many years, I've been around now for 12 years on council, and there's people sitting here who've been around for a lot longer. And we've seen a lot of burnout of staff being forced to do too much. Tremendous amounts of overtime costs have been incurred by the town of Petawawa especially over the last 10 years or so. Because we have so few staff, we make them stay late at night, we make them come on weekends and work evenings, and the amount of overtime we've been paying them is atrocious. Not only that, when they retire, and this is nothing against the employees themselves, it's just the system. When they retire, they have built up a large amount of bank time that is accumulated, and it's overtime. And it's something that takes us a while to pay out, even long after they're gone, whether they've left through attrition or they've retired. There's been huge overtime costs. So we did a lot of soul searching and looking at how we can improve those overtime costs and how we can avoid staff burnout. And it was to increase the present staff that we have. For the first time, we hired an HR coordinator. We never had anybody to deal with, other than the CAO, to deal with our union negotiations, any HR issues, benefit packages, all that sort of thing. For the first time, we hired an IT coordinator. And I can tell you firsthand knowledge what a benefit that has been. Before, if my laptop broke down, we would have to contact our contracted IT person, and maybe they'd get here next week, and it would take a week for any of our issues to get fixed. Now we have a dedicated IT person in-house And if anything goes wrong, especially since we're streaming now on YouTube, or if anything goes wrong with phones, laptops, computers, we have somebody in the building that fixes it right away. It just makes things a lot more efficient. Departments like the planning department, for many, many years, that department was a person of one. And Petawawa, as you know, has been seeing tremendous growth. Subdivisions, roads, housing, everything, that was all coordinated by one person, which is incredible when you think of it. Now there is a staff of 3 in that department, and it has not only allowed us to keep up with the development in this town, but has allowed that staff to innovate, take certain initiatives, and do things that we weren't able to do before when it was being run by one person. For example, tomorrow we have a housing summit that's going on all day right here in Town Hall. The Garrison is coming, CNL is coming, a lot of major developers, not only from here, but from outside of the town of Petawawa, are coming here, and we're putting on a summit to show them that sort of we're open for business. Here's what we need, here's what the Garrison's needs are, here's what CNL's projected employee base is, here are the types of housing we are going to need, here's the affordable housing we need, here are the seniors' residences we need. Who can come to Petawawa and help us with this type of development? Whereas before, with a department of 1, that one person could only just tread water and keep her head above water and just get done what needed to be done in the town. So we're hoping that we'll have more things like what is going on tomorrow that will help attract new development, new developers into this town and take care of the housing crunch that we're facing. Not only just building new single-family homes, but we need affordable housing. We need housing for seniors. We need all kinds of different housing, and the Garrison has different needs as well. So we thought, what better ways to bring all these folks in, let them know what we need. But we couldn't have done that unless we had a staff of 3 people in that department. Recently, we took over the Silver Threads Seniors Recreation Center. We kind of had our hand forced by the province to do so. But now that is our responsibility to use the funding that's given by the government and provide the seniors programming here in the town of Petawawa. But we had to staff it. Before, it was staffed by the Silver Threads using the grants that they had. Now we have to provide the staffing. We have 2 people over there that are doing amazing things. If you listen to any of the feedback from the people that use it, there's an increase in programming, there's an increase in variety, and it's an overall more enjoyable experience. But it takes more employees. Summer programming and March break and Christmas holiday programming for kids. In past years, even last year, it sells out in seconds. So parents are sitting at home online waiting for it to open, and then they're hitting the buttons trying to get spots for their kids. So we made a decision that that's not the way we want recreation programming to run here in Petawawa. We want to have opportunities and provisions for all of the kids. But to do that, you have to spend money. You have to hire more staff. You have to offer more slots, more programming, and more space to do it in. What other departments? I could go on, but we're a town of 20,000 people. And even with the staffing we've done in the last 18 months, 18 months, 2 years, 18 months, we still have fewer staff than the town of Renfrew, which has a population of about 8,000. So we're getting there, and I understand that it costs money, but in order to keep all of our road plowed, and we are taking on new subdivisions as well. Every time a subdivision gets turned over to the town of Petawawa, that's more roads to plow, more sidewalks to plow, more cracks to fill, more maintenance to do. And you can't do that without increasing your staffing contingent. So as we grow and expand, you will see in the future that we're going to face even more increased pressures to increase staff. You just heard Christine mention about volunteer firefighters. Our contingency of firefighters was 37, but we never did reach it in the last 10 years or so. I think we're just hiring the 37th one right now. They're just clearing their medical, and the plan is to add 2 more for next year because we have more houses. We have more calls for service when it comes to fire in the town of Petawawa, and all that costs money. I appreciate your comment about the 7% and about all the pressures we're facing in the world right now. And you're right. There's an individual down south of us that is doing some strange things that are having an effect on us here in Canada. I hope that he gives us a little reprieve like he did last time, and that will be delayed and that it's just a negotiating tactic. But I guess we'll find out tomorrow. And hopefully the effect on us here in Petawawa is not as great as it may turn out to be. And yeah, it's a world of increasing costs, high inflation, but the town is not immune to that either. When our citizens face increased costs, so do we. When fuel costs go up, we have to pay those as well. When anything goes up in terms of costs, all of the bills that we have to pay for as the town of Petawawa, unfortunately, they go up as well. As I said in my preamble, it's not something we want to do. We would love to come forward every year and say taxes are going up 0%. Unfortunately, in the world we live in, it's not realistic. And the more we reduce taxes, the more we push things down the road. I'll just give you one example. Portage Road was supposed to be paved this year in 2025, but we couldn't afford it. It's an over $2 million project for the entire length of Portage, just over $3 million. So we had to move that down the road. If any of you drive on it, you know that it's not in great shape. And we don't like to have roads in the town of Petawawa that aren't in great shape. And I think you'd agree, if you drive anywhere in the county, we have pretty good roads and streets compared to the rest of the county. Our Public Works Department takes great pride in the condition of our roads and the condition they keep it in, the way they plow it. We've looked ahead to 2026, and we can't afford Portage Road in 2026 either. Maybe partially, but a lot of that depends on grants that we get and what we do in terms of a tax increase. So there's a project that was supposed to be done this year, but is now being delayed to 2026 and perhaps into 2027. So the unfortunate reality is the more we reduce taxes now, the more pressure it's going to put on us in future years, and the more projects you'll see shoved down the road. And that will lead to a deterioration in the condition of your roads, sidewalks, everything else. And yeah, we'd like to increase recreation programming for kids, but if we don't have a means of revenue to do that, then an increase in recreation programming for kids, we'll do that next year. We'll do that next year. So I sympathize and I agree with you, Wayne. We don't want to raise taxes, but it's not only raising it for this year to face the financial pressures of this year, but it's to ensure the future of our town is not just shoved ahead onto future councils, and then they're faced with even greater tax increases down the road. Did I answer everything, Wayne? That was pretty long-winded. Okay, are there anybody else? Yeah, sure.
I agree with what you've said, and I like what I've heard tonight, but the two projects that kind of are not in the need to me is, one is the branding and the second is the track. And could those be pushed back? And just to alleviate some of that percentage?
Yeah. I'll let Christine go first.
Sorry, just to clarify on the branding, what's proposed in the budget to be funded for branding is $10,000, and that's coming out of reserves. So there's nothing in that 7% that's associated with branding. So just I wanted to clarify that.
So the 10,000 is to look at branding?
No, it would be part of so there is a branding review that's being undertaken currently. There's no cost associated with that in terms of what that $10,000 is for. Would relate to more so on the marketing materials and the rollout of that, but it wouldn't be funded from taxation.
Okay.
We've already set in previous years that had already been set aside by previous councils for economic development initiatives like branding.
Because branding, like to do a new brand is one thing, to implement a new branding is just significantly much greater than that. Anyway, so the current kind of stays then? Like the current logo stays and everything, like the branding?
I can answer that one. That's okay. So we sent out an RFP for a company to study and give us some options on a new logo, marketing logo for the town of Petawawa. The current logo that we do have, the corporate logo, I'll call it, which is the circle with the deer and the rope and Petawawa. That's remaining as our corporate logo. This new marketing logo is replacing, you'll see it when you walk into the main hall of Town Hall. It's just the burgundy sign that says Petawawa Dynamic by Nature. There's no actual logo. It's just burgundy lettering that says Petawawa Dynamic by Nature. So we're not getting rid of the Dynamic by Nature tagline. This is merely an exercise in finding a new marketing logo. We put out the RFP, and a company with ties to the military, they had formerly lived here in the community, offered to do it for nothing. So because this company did that, we saved about $45,000. They're coming forward with some proposals for the marketing logo. What's still up for debate is how we're going to implement this marketing logo in terms of what we keep the old corporate logo on and what we use the new marketing logo for. So future costs for implementing this marketing logo, we're going to take a slow and steady approach. So anytime something needs replacing, which would have been replaced anyways. So for example, we've got some part of our active transportation, all of our new trail systems and such. There's a program that has wayfinding signage. So along the Algonquin Trail and along our other trails, there'll be signs that say, you know, Civic Center this way, pointing tourists to the various locations. That was going to roll out anyways. Now it's just going to have a new logo on it. So it's a cost that was already going to be incurred. Now it's just going to have a new marketing logo on it. When somebody eventually runs out of business cards and you replace them, it'll get the new logo on it. So it's a cost that would have been incurred. We'll just wait until it happens, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, there's still costs incurred because they have to digitize the logo on every new form or every, like we did it with the school boards and whatnot. And the track.
The track. Okay, so the track is really reliant on a government grant. So right now there's, it's called CSRIF grant program, Stream 2, and it's for new recreational infrastructure. So should we be successful, there are two ways it can happen. They could give us a 50-50 split for the grant. And if that happens, the money is not going to come from current taxation or from the 7%. It's coming from reserves at the Civic Center. So money that's already there that's been collected. There's also the opportunity to get an enhanced grant, which would be $750,000 instead of the $500,000, which would, you know, reduce the onus on the town reserves by half. The school board is also, I don't want to say donated, but contributed $500,000. So we're just taking advantage of an opportunity. Should the grant come in, and the school board has already said their funding is coming in, it's an opportunity to have a project completed at a low cost to the town. So it's not every day that you get $750,000 from the government, $500,000 from a school board to do a project within the town. So it's sort of taking advantage of an opportunity. And again, the money, should it all come to fruition, any of the money the town needs to contribute is going to come from the reserve. The reason the track was chosen is because there was a deadline to get an application in, and it was the only shovel-ready recreation project we had in the books. So that the design, the drawings, and all of the work had already been done, and that's why it was put forward. The grant was there. Let's take a chance and see if we can get it. Right now, the provincial government, as you know, has not been replaced, but is rolled over, and any of their communications regarding any of the grants that were done by the previous rendition of that government have been put on hold. So we're not going to find out anytime soon, but we're hopeful. Any other questions from any members of the public? I just want to thank, I'll open it up for any questions or comments from members of council? Everybody's good? So in case you're wondering, next Monday, March the 10th, this same budget is going to be brought forward to council for debate, discussion, and eventual passing. So it doesn't mean that what we presented here this evening is going to happen next Monday. It could, or it could be a variation of what we've seen here today, depending on what council decides next Monday. Okay, I just want to thank everybody again for coming here this evening. I hope that what you've seen here has cleared things up, satisfied your concerns, and it was great to hear your input and your questions. It helps us as a council decide what we're going to do in the town of Petawawa moving forward, not only for the 2025 budget year, but for the years far into the future. Everything we do now affects what happens in years to come. So thanks again for coming and providing your questions, feedback, input. It is, once again, it is your budget. Okay, I'll declare this public meeting closed.
Thanks again, everybody. Thank you. Thanks for your letter, Peter.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting for the council of the town of Petawawa to order for March 3rd, 2025. Welcome to members of council, staff, and our guests in the studio audience, and the thousands of you watching at home. We'll start this evening off by the reading of the land acknowledgement, and this evening it's Councillor Carmody.
Thank you, Mayor Service. As we gather this evening, I would like to acknowledge on behalf of the Petawawa Town Council and our community that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Omami-Winnie people. We would like to thank the Omami-Winnie people and express our respect and support for their rich history, and we are extremely grateful for their many and continued displays of friendship. We also thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years, and we wish to acknowledge our shared responsibilities in responding to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's 94 calls to action. Calls to action number 44. We call upon the Government of Canada to develop a national action plan, strategies, and other concrete measures to achieve the goals of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Recent progress. On July 19, 2023, the second annual progress report on the implementation of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act was tabled in Parliament. Preparation of the 2023 annual progress report prioritized expanding consultation with Indigenous partners in the development of its content. Over 50 Indigenous partners contributed to the report and offered over 200 specific suggestions related to Section 7 of the UN Declarations Act.
Thank you, Councillor Carmody. And now I'd ask everybody in attendance if they would please rise and stand for a moment of silent reflection. Thank you very much. I need a motion to approve tonight's agenda. Moved by Councillor Root, seconded by Councillor Driscoll, that the agenda for March 3rd, 2025 regular meeting of council be adopted. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? It's carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest on any of this evening's matters? See none. We have some minutes for approval. The council meeting of February 18th, 2025. I need a motion to approve those minutes. Moved by Councillor Coutu, seconded by Councillor Donovan, that the minutes of the regular meeting of council held February 18th, 2025 be approved as printed and circulated. Any questions, comments, concerns on the minutes? I'll call for the vote. All in favor? It's carried. Okay, next up we have a couple of public meetings. It's public meeting night tonight. This is our second of three. The first public meeting is on a zoning bylaw amendment from rural RU to residential 1, exception R1-E zones, part of lot 17 and 18, concession 1, Barron Canyon Road. This is on behalf of James W. LaPointe Motor Holdings Incorporated. The county approved a consent application B102/23, B103/23, and B104/23 for the severance of these lands on August 2nd, 2024, on condition that the lands be rezoned. The approval of this zoning bylaw amendment will fulfill condition 2 of the consent approval, and this application was submitted by JP2G Consultants on behalf of James W. LaPointe Motor Holdings Incorporated. I'd just like to ask our planner, Melanie, to confirm notice of public meeting has been given.
Notice has been provided as required under the Planning Act.
Thank you. Have there been any written comments received regarding the application?
We received one written comment from Enbridge Gas with no objection to the amendment. No other written comments were received.
Thank you. And now if you could just briefly explain the purpose of the amendment.
The subject property is on Barron Canyon Road. It is about 9 hectares or just over 22 acres in size. As the mayor mentioned in the preamble, there are severances for 3 lots. Each lot requires a zoning amendment to the zoning bylaw for a different reason. The first lot is going to be rezoned from rural to residential 1, exception 58. There is a large livestock barn across the road from this lot, and therefore a minimum distance separation calculation is required to make sure that a new dwelling doesn't interfere with this livestock facility. That calculation results in a dwelling having to be set back 173 meters from the front lot line on this lot. So that is for lot 1. Lot 2, it's being rezoned from rural and residential 1 to residential 1, exception 59. And that is because there are existing outbuildings on this property. And in order to comply with the minimum distance separation from this large livestock facility across the road, the existing outbuildings cannot be used to house livestock. And for the third lot, it's being rezoned from rural to residential 1, exception 60, to reduce the lot frontage from 30 meters to 20 meters. It has an unconventional lot configuration, and so it only has 20 meters of frontage on Barron Canyon Road. So the effect of these amendments is to allow for the newly severed lots to comply with zoning and be conveyed separately.
Thank you. Is the applicant present, and do they wish to make any opening comments or explain or support the application?
No, they are not.
Okay, Melanie, if you could please explain the appeal process.
So there is a 20-day appeal period for this application. However, recent changes to the Planning Act have altered appeal rights. Zoning bylaw amendments may be appealed only by specified persons, public bodies, and the registered owner of any land to which the amendment applies. Members of the public generally, including adjacent landowners and ratepayer groups, do not fall within the definition of a specified person or a public body, and are therefore not entitled to appeal a municipality's approval of the bylaw. Individuals may, however, speak to the application during this public meeting so that council may consider their comments in advance of deciding upon the proposed amendment.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that has any comments or questions on the amendment application? Yeah, just come forward, and Melanie will give you the microphone there. And the chair, look at that.
Mr. Mayor and members of council, regarding the item number 3, the mailing address by impact for the CF zone property was an error, so the Church and Cemetery Board did not get the notice. There's no objection to the severance. However, I guess we're just trying to find out, under the Planning Act, does the residential property, must it abide with the Line Fences Act for joint contributions to a fence, just to prevent trespassing onto the cemetery?
Melanie?
The question is, under the Planning Act, is the owner of the residential property, which would be item number 3, would they be subject to the Line Fences Act in contributing to a fence between the proposed lot and the cemetery?
I would have to look into that.
Yeah. Like I said, there's no objection to the severance. We're just, in the case of there's future trespass, whether who has to pay for improving the fence. At the present time, it's a farm fence that has fallen into disrepair.
Okay, Melanie and her department will look into that and we'll get you an answer, Wayne.
Okay, thanks very much.
Anyone else in the audience that has questions or comments on the amendment application? Are there any questions from members of council? Okay, then I'll declare this public meeting closed. Okay, next we have our third and final public meeting. This is a zoning bylaw amendment application submitted by Ashley Party Serre and Kevin Serre. The county approved a consent application B20/2022 and B21/22 for the severance of these lands on March 29, 2023, on condition that the lands be rezoned. The approval of this zoning bylaw amendment will fulfill condition 2 of the consent approval. Melanie, can you confirm notice of public meeting has been given?
Notice has been provided as required under the Planning Act.
Thank you. Can you please advise if any written comments have been received regarding the application?
Only one written comment was received. It was from Enbridge, and they have no objection.
And now if you would briefly explain the purpose of the amendment.
The subject property fronts on Rance and Seamus Roads. It's part of lots 4 and 5 concession 8 in the town of Petawawa. The original property was approximately 22 hectares, 56 acres in area. The 2 severed parcels are 1.05 hectares and 2.58 hectares respectively. The purpose of the amendment is to rezone the 2 severed lots from rural to residential 1. The retained portion of the property has an existing dwelling and outbuildings. The severed parcels are vacant. The effect of the amendment is to allow for the newly severed lots to comply with residential zoning and be conveyed separately.
Is the applicant present and do they wish to make any opening comments or? Thanks, Ashley. Could you please explain the appeal process, Melanie?
So as I mentioned for the last application, there is a 20-day appeal period. However, recent changes to the Planning Act have altered appeal rights. Zoning bylaw amendments may be appealed, but only by specified persons, public bodies, and the registered owner of any land to which the amendment may apply. Members of the public generally, including adjacent landowners and ratepayer groups, do not fall within the definition of a specified person or public body, and are therefore not entitled to appeal a municipality's approval of the bylaw. Individuals may, however, speak to the application during this meeting so that council may consider their comments in advance of deciding upon the proposed amendment.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to comment or has questions on the application? Seeing none, are there any questions from members of council? Okay, I'll declare this public meeting closed as well. Thank you, Melanie. There are no presentations, so next we'll go to bylaws. First up, we have bylaw 1728/25, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 456/07 of the Corporation of the Town of Petawawa as amended. I need a motion for first and second reading of the bylaw. Moved by Councillor Coutu, seconded by Councillor Donovan, that bylaw 1728/25, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 456/07 of the Corporation of the Town of Petawawa as amended, be read a first and second time. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? It's carried.
Corporation of the Town of Petawawa, bylaw 1728/25, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 456/07 of the Corporation of the Town of Petawawa as amended. This constitutes first and second reading of bylaw 1728/25.
I need a motion for third and final reading of the bylaw. Moved by Councillor Roots, seconded by Councillor Coutu, that bylaw 1728/25 be read a third and final time and passed. Any questions, concerns, members of council? That is the bylaw that we just had the public meeting for. 3 lots on Barron Canyon Road. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? It's carried.
Corporation of the Town of Petawawa, bylaw 1728/25, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 456/07 of the Corporation of the Town of Petawawa as amended. This constitutes third and final reading of bylaw 1728/25, this third day of March 2025.
Next up, we have bylaw 1729/25, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 456/07 of the Corporation of the Town of Petawawa as amended. I need a motion for first and second reading of the bylaw. Moved by Councillor Roots, seconded by Councillor Carmody, that bylaw 1729/25, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 456/07 of the Corporation of the Town of Petawawa as amended, be read a first and second time. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? It's carried.
Corporation of the Town of Petawawa, bylaw 1729/25, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 456/07 of the Corporation of the Town of Petawawa as amended. This constitutes first and second reading of bylaw 1729/25.
I need a motion for third and final reading of bylaw 1729/25. Moved by Councillor Donovan, seconded by Councillor Driscoll, that bylaw 1729/25 be read a third and final time and passed. Any comments or concerns? That's the bylaw for the other public meeting. We just had the 2 lots on Seamus Road. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? It's carried.
Corporation of the Town of Petawawa, bylaw 1729/25, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 456/07 of the Corporation of the Town of Petawawa as amended. This constitutes third and final reading of bylaw 1729/25, this third day of March 2025.
Next up, we have bylaw 1730/25, being a bylaw to establish a highway. I need a motion for first and second reading of bylaw 1730/25. Moved by Councillor Carmody, seconded by Councillor Donovan, that bylaw 1730/25, being a bylaw to establish a highway, be read a first and second time. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? It's carried.
Corporation of the Town of Petawawa, bylaw 1730/25, being a bylaw to establish a highway. This constitutes the first and second reading of bylaw 1730/25.
I need a motion for third and final reading of bylaw 1730/25. Moved by Councillor Coutu, seconded by Councillor Roots, that bylaw 1730/25 be read a third and final time and passed. Any questions or comments? And this is concerning the town's assumption of Bedard Boulevard, correct? I'll call for the vote. All in favor? I was looking at Melanie, not you, Colin. It's carried.
Corporation of the Town of Petawawa, bylaw 1730/25, being a bylaw to establish a highway. This constitutes third and final reading of bylaw 1730/25, this third day of March 2025.
Next, we have bylaw 1731/25, being a bylaw to require that all retail business establishments in the town of Petawawa be closed on Christmas Day, December 25th. I need a motion for first and second reading of the bylaw. Moved by Councillor Roots, seconded by Councillor Driscoll, that bylaw 1731/25, being a bylaw to require that all retail business establishments in the town of Petawawa be closed on Christmas Day, December 25th, be read a first and second time. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? It's carried.
Corporation of the Town of Petawawa, bylaw 1731/25, being a bylaw to require that all retail business establishments in the town of Petawawa be closed on Christmas Day, December 25th. This constitutes first and second reading of bylaw 1731/25.
I need a motion for third and final reading of bylaw 1731/25. Moved by Councillor Coutu, seconded by Councillor Carmody, that bylaw 1731/25 be read a third and final time and passed. Are there any questions or comments from members of council? This may cause some confusion for those watching at home, but it's part of the next bylaw as well, to streamline the town's policies and processes in terms of businesses applying to remain open on certain holidays. We're making Christmas the only one that they have to be closed on and have to make application for. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? It's carried.
Corporation of the Town of Petawawa, bylaw 1731/25, being a bylaw to require that all retail business establishments in the town of Petawawa be closed on Christmas Day, December 25th. This constitutes third and final reading of bylaw 1731/25, this third day of March 2025.
Next, we have bylaw 1732/25, being a bylaw to provide that Retail Business Holidays Act does not apply in the town of Petawawa. I need a motion for first and second reading of that bylaw. Moved by Councillor Donovan, seconded by Councillor Coutu. The bylaw 1732/25, being a bylaw to provide that Retail Business Holidays Act does not apply in the town of Petawawa, be read a first and second time. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? It's carried.
Corporation of the Town of Petawawa, bylaw 1732-25, being a bylaw to provide that Retail Business Holidays Act does not apply to the Town of Petawawa. This constitutes first and second reading of bylaw 1732-25.
I need a motion for third and final reading of bylaw 1732/25. Moved by Councillor Carmody, seconded by Councillor Coutu, that bylaw 1732/25 be read a third and final time and passed. Any questions, concerns on the bylaw? So this is part 2 of the bylaw where we're creating greater efficiencies in terms of businesses not having to apply to remain open on holidays other than Christmas. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? It's carried.
Corporation of the Town of Petawawa, bylaw 1732-25, being a bylaw to provide that Retail Business Holidays Act does not apply in the Town of Petawawa. This constitutes third and final reading of bylaw 1732-25, this third day of March 2025.
Okay, next we'll go to correspondence. First up is a request for a trade tariff recommendation. This is coming from me, but it's also coming from the county and many other municipalities, not only in Renfrew County, but across Ontario and across Canada. All as a part of some of the threats that we're facing from our nearest neighbor in terms of tariffs and other various policies and procedures that they have foisted upon us. It's part of not only Renfrew County and Ontario, but the broader country of Canada to take measures to reduce the effect these tariffs might have on us by promoting think local, shop local, anything we can do to support our Canadian businesses, support our Canadian economy, and reduce our dependency on our neighbor to the south. So this recommendation has been making the rounds in Ontario. Quite a few of the municipalities right here in Renfrew County have already supported it. And now we're asking you, our council of the town of Petawawa, if you would be interested in supporting this recommendation to increase our ability to promote local, think local as a way of combating perhaps what might happen tomorrow by noon. Questions from Councillor Carmody?
Thank you, Mayor Service. I'd certainly be in favor of supporting this. However, this resolution will be distributed to other municipalities in the province? Okay. Well, we definitely have to add an A onto the end of Petawawa then. Because therefore be it resolved that the town of Petawawa is missing an A.
I picked up on that today. Thank you for bringing it to life.
Excellent. Yeah, we'll get that fixed before we show it to anybody else.
His pay will be docked accordingly.
Okay, I know I've read a lot already, but I have to read this recommendation or resolution into the minutes, so here we go. So the recommendation is that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Petawawa adopt the following motion. Whereas trade between Ontario and the United States is vital to the economic prosperity of Petawawa and its businesses, industries, and workforce. And whereas the proposed tariffs on Canadian goods exported to the U.S. could negatively impact local businesses, industries, and municipalities, increasing costs and reducing economic opportunities. And whereas according to the data from the associations of municipalities of Ontario, across Ontario municipalities are expected to spend between 250 and 290 billion on infrastructure in the next 10 years. And whereas municipalities spend over 22 billion annually procuring goods and services and are willing and eager to use this significant buying power to support the federal and provincial governments in protecting Ontario and Canada's economic well-being. And whereas municipalities play a key role in local economic development and procurement and should have the ability to support local businesses while ensuring value for taxpayers. And whereas Ontario municipalities have traditionally treated trade partners equally and fairly in all procurements in accordance with our established international trade treaties. And whereas Canada's Prime Minister and Ontario's Premier have outlined several plans to combat the impact that the proposed tariffs would have on Ontario, which focus on strengthening trade between Ontario and the U.S. while bringing jobs back home for workers on both sides of the border. And whereas the Canadian government has also outlined several ways to address the current relationship with the U.S., including establishing the Council on Canada-U.S. Relations to support the federal government as it negotiates with the U.S. on tariffs. And whereas trade between Ontario and the U.S. is very important to our residents and local economies and requires all levels of government to work together in the best interest of those residents. And whereas many Ontario municipalities are passing resolutions calling for a united cross-Canada approach to supporting Buy Canadian initiatives and collaboration to remove barriers that prevent municipalities from giving preference to Canadian suppliers during procurement. And whereas the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus has passed resolutions supporting the efforts of the Canadian and Ontario governments in their negotiations with the U.S. to address these trade barriers. And therefore it be resolved that the town of Petawawa supports other municipalities that have passed resolutions urging the Canadian and Ontario governments to take all necessary measures to protect Ontario's interests in trade negotiations and to ensure municipalities are included in a coordinated response. And further, that the town of Petawawa supports efforts to remove barriers that limit municipalities' ability to prioritize Canadian suppliers in procurement while ensuring fair and transparent trade practices. And further, that the town of Petawawa continues to support local businesses, industries, and workforce through the efforts of the Economic Development Department, including Shop Local and Buy Canadian campaign. And further, this resolution be forwarded to the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus, the County of Peterborough, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, the Rural Ontario Municipal Association, local municipalities of Renfrew County, and relevant federal and provincial representatives. And I'll let you know, Councillor Carmody, that Petawawa is spelled correctly on the most updated version that I'm now reading from. So we're all good. Just to add to that, the Renfrew County itself has come out with a Think Local campaign that's being shared by our economic development on all of our social media websites to help encourage all of our residents to not only shop right here in Renfrew County, but use Canadian products wherever they can. Also, steps we've taken right here in the town of Petawawa are to cease the purchase of any goods on Amazon wherever possible, if possible, at all times, and to shop local every chance we get in terms of municipality. So all the departments have been directed to do the best that they can to try and acquire all of our needs right here in Renfrew County or here in the province or in the country of Canada. I think it's the least we can do. If these tariffs do come to fruition tomorrow, it is going to put stresses and pressures on a lot of Canadian industries, businesses, economies, municipalities. So at the very least, what we can do here in the town of Petawawa is support our local businesses, support businesses that are in Renfrew County and here in our province, and shop Canadian as much as we can. I think it's great when you go to the grocery stores and you see little Canadian flags on all of the products in our stores. And there's a push towards getting little Renfrew County markers on products that are made in Renfrew County. So thanks for supporting this, and hopefully what has been threatened tomorrow does not happen. But it is uncertain times we're living in, and I think it's important anyways to support our local business and economy. Okay, so I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Roots, seconded by Councillor Donovan. The Council of the Corporation of the Town of Petawawa adopt the trade tariff recommendation as proposed. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? It's carried. Okay, the next piece of correspondence. We've had this before us at council, at past council meetings. So it's back in front of you again. We want to start sending out notices to local businesses and eventually to residents in the affected area. So this is all dealing with the proposed postal code change affecting residents and businesses within the K8A postal code zone. So what you see before you is a feedback letter that we hope to send out to local businesses and residents to let them know of our proposal. The goal here is to get feedback from the businesses and the residents in this area. And if it's favorable, then we have to send this resolution to Canada Post. In conversations with Canada Post, should this be successful and we do send them a resolution, it's not something they would do this year. It's something that would get onto their schedule of things to do. And they weren't even making any promises about 2026. So I won't go over all of the reasons why this should happen or the legacy issues of why this became a K8A zone back in the day when the post office had a little spat over employees in different municipalities and who should deliver the mail. But here's where we are today, where there's over 900 homes and 50 businesses that have a K8A address. You'll see listed on the letter that's going out to the businesses quite a few complications and annoyances that affect all of these residents that live there. You'll notice some new ones that popped up just recently with the provincial election. But there are people who live in Petawawa who had to go to another municipality to vote because their address said Pembroke. And it just gives me a bad feeling that anybody in Petawawa should have to leave their town to go and vote in an election. Another one that popped up from a complaint from a resident, when a courier, Pure Courier, comes to deliver a package that can't be left in your doorstep, and they put a little notice that says go and pick it up at our depot. If you live in this section with a Pembroke address, they take it to the Pure depot out on Drive-In Road out in the back end of Pembroke, and not to Greco Pizza here in Petawawa because your address said Pembroke. So, and I know everybody's familiar with all the other litany of complaints, but the bottom line is we have probably over 2,000 people and 50 businesses who live in the town of Petawawa, but their address says Pembroke. So what we're looking for here is just a motion to get this notice out to businesses and people in the affected area. Are there any questions or comments from Councillor Driscoll?
I will definitely support this. It's funny that it comes up. When I was out canvassing with some individuals today, 2 people brought this up that their address was in Pembroke, and they didn't even know it was on the agenda. So it kind of works out very well. So I will be supporting it for sure. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, I need a motion then. Moved by Councillor Roots, seconded by Councillor Driscoll. The council approves the proposed postal code change feedback letter as drafted and supports it being distributed to affected businesses and residents within the K8A zone. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Carried. Next, we have minutes from the council and committee meeting of February 24th, 2025. I need a motion to approve those minutes. Moved by Councillor Coutu, seconded by Councillor Carmody, that the minutes of the council and committee meeting held on February 24th, 2025 be accepted by council, and that resolutions from that committee become resolutions of council. Are there any questions or concerns on the minutes? I'll call for the vote. All in favor? It's carried. Next, we have Pembroke and Area Airport Commission meeting minutes from November 21st, 2024. I need a motion to accept the minutes. Moved by Councillor Roots, seconded by Councillor Driscoll, that the minutes of the Pembroke and Area Airport Commission meeting held on November 21st, 2024 be adopted as information. And who's speaking this evening? Councillor Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think lots of the stuff we have touched, but this is obviously when they just received our plow truck and loader that we gave them. So they were quite happy about that. We also got a new snow blower. Well, we got a used snow blower to use for parts to fix the other old one. And I think we ended up with a grass cutter at that same time. And there was no new business. So if anyone has any questions, let me know.
Any questions on the airport meeting minutes? Then I'll call for the vote. All in favor? It's carried. Next, we have Festival Hall Committee meeting minutes from December 6, 2024. I need a motion to accept those minutes. Moved by Councillor Roots, seconded by Councillor Donovan, that the minutes of the Festival Hall Committee meeting held on December 6, 2024 be adopted as information. Councillor Roots.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have spoken to everything on this minutes. So if anyone does have any questions, I'll be more than glad to take them. Thank you.
Questions on the Festival Hall report? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? It's carried. And finally, the Petawawa Public Library Board meeting minutes of December 16, 2024. I need a motion to accept those minutes. Moved by Councillor Carmody, seconded by Councillor Coutu, that the minutes of the Petawawa Public Library Board meeting held on December 16, 2024 be adopted as information. Councillor Carmody.
Thank you, Mayor Service. So this was our last library board meeting of the year, of 2024 that is. And you'll see that on it we had, we're making progress on our pay equity. We're doing a pay equity review at the moment. Upgrading our IT, implementation of Microsoft 365, some 5-year capital budget planning discussion. I'd be happy to address any questions that anybody may have.
Questions on the library report? I'll call for the vote. All in favor? It's carried. No staff reports, so we'll go to councillor reports. Councillor Carmody.
I can report that earlier this in February, oops, sorry, forgot to hit the button. I attended a Scottish flag raising on behalf of the mayor, which was held at the Kin Hut, and the Scottish Society of Ottawa was here to do a flag raising and a kilt skate, which was something a little different. But the former mayor of Petawawa, Bob Sweet, being a true Scot himself, came to the event and gave a few words of Scottish tribute and explained what the Scottish flag was all about and a few things like that. So that was an interesting day. And I've attended various other board meetings and that sort of thing. So that's my report.
Thank you, and thanks for attending on my behalf, the Scottish Kilt Skate. And thanks to former Mayor Bob Sweet as well for weighing in with the Scottish side of things. Did you wear a kilt, Councillor Carmody, and skate? No kilt. Councillor Coutu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just report that on February 24th, I attended a library board meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On February 20th, I attended an airport meeting. On the 23rd, I went to a public skate at the Civic Center. I want to thank the sponsors and very happy to see how well attended it was. The ice was packed. And I've also been to our outdoor rink twice, and the turnout there has also been amazing. So keep everyone getting outside and keep skating. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Nothing to report at this time.
Not even reports of your vacation? Councillor Roots.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to add to Councillor Driscoll's report about the airport. Yes, so at that meeting, we had a financial audited statement from our accounting team, business update and operational elections where Councillor Driscoll was elected onto the executive committee and myself to vice chair of the airport commission. So it was a very good meeting. February 22nd, I attended a youth dance competition at Festival Hall. It was very well received and nice to see the talent level of all these young people. Also, the town was very well representative by the skills from our youth from Petawawa. Very well. Thank you.
Thank you, and congratulations again to Councillor Roots and Driscoll for their election to senior roles out at the airport. It's great to have good representation out there. CAO is going to be really happy. It's going to be my shortest one ever. Wow. So all I have to report is the county council meetings. Just remind everybody about their Think Local campaign again. Just to report that they received a grant from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing for the Encampment Response Initiative of $216,000 to go towards the warming center. Also, they put in an application for $2 million to the CSRIF Stream 2 for the Bissett Creek crossing on the Algonquin Trail. So they're not going to use the bridge overpass anymore, the rail bridge. They're going to do a little detour around it to prevent future rehabilitation of the bridge. And there was a very interesting presentation from Lee Perkins on rural transit options that I sent out to everybody. There were some great ideas and some very innovative things that other communities in Ontario are using. The county wants to take the initiative on this, but it looks like a great way for us to collaborate and cooperate with the county on some form of rural transportation. Because as we know, there's not much to offer in Renfrew County in terms of moving people around that don't have vehicles. So it'd be great if we could collaborate on something that was county-wide and provide assistance, not only to our residents, but everybody else to get moving. On the 24th, there was a public meeting right here in council chambers on the urban farm. On the 27th, we had our second community health and well-being roundtable. That was very well attended again, and a lot of excellent input and innovative ideas from all the members of our community in terms of mental health and the services provided here in our town. So we're looking forward to our next one, where we talk about solutions and what all of these providers can offer us here in the town of Petawawa. On Friday the 28th, I had a Zoom meeting with the mayor of Leeuwarden and his team. It's a good thing they all speak English very well, because my Dutch is extremely limited. But it was great to finally meet them, not in person, but through video, and they're very excited to come here on April the 15th. Well, actually, they'll be here for about 4 days, but they're very excited to come to Petawawa, experience all that we in the garrison have to offer, and join us in our parade with the RCDs and honoring the liberators of Leeuwarden. I did discover that the mayor of Leeuwarden has a driver and a car, but the CAO said it's not in our budget for a driver and a car for the mayor of Petawawa. They were very interested in knowing what the weather was like here, and I told them the next morning we're going to have 15 centimeters of snow, and it's minus 20. And I said I'd be using a snowblower, and none of them knew what that was. So I did send them a video of me snowblowing on Saturday morning. They had a good laugh with that. And also on Friday, I had a meeting with Richard, the owner of Evolution Muay Thai, who's having a fight night on June 7th here in town of Petawawa. Encourage everybody to get out and see that. There's nothing for closed. I need a motion for confirming bylaw. Moved by Councillor Driscoll, seconded by Councillor Carmody, that bylaw 1733/25 be read a first, second, and third time and passed. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? It's carried.
Corporation of the Town of Petawawa, bylaw 1733/25, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held on March 3rd, 2025. This constitutes first, second, and third reading short of bylaw 1733/25, this third day of March 2025.
I need a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Driscoll, seconded by Councillor Roots, that the meeting adjourn to the call of the mayor. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? It's carried.